All right, welcome back to HNB Podcast with Cosmo and Rivkah. Delilah.
Well, that's.
I'm just mixing stuff up. All right, hey, welcome back, everybody. This is.
Wait, I get to say my hello of the day.
Oh yeah.
Hola. That's Spanish.
Okay, so let's back up. So, Riv, why don't you tell them what your plan
No,
is?
I'm going to say hello in a different language every single time. So I said hola.
That's what I'm saying, but you got to
Hola.
you got to describe that so that everyone
Okay,
knows
so
why you're
every
doing
day,
it.
every time we have a recording, I'm going to say hello in a different language from all over the world. Baby countries we've never even heard of. I don't know. I'm going to do this investigation. I'm just saying that I wanted to say last time was hello, and so today is hola, because that's how you say it, Antonio.
Yeah, exactly.
He's mocking me behind me. That's cowardly.
Yeah.
Say it to my face.
All right.
Okay, so let's continue.
So, so welcome back, and again, just a reminder: if you would, don't forget to send us your podcast questions, what you'd like us to talk about, what you'd like us to discuss. You can send it to podcast@shalomaz.com, podcast@shalomaz.com, or you can text it to us. Text it to us at 602-903-6565. That's 602-903-6565. Okay, so we are going to continue. We started telling, the question was asked to us, how the Lord brought us together. And so we began that lengthy story. And I think we ended talking about just before our very first date. So we were about to go on our first date, which was on April the 1st.
April Fool's Day.
April 1st, 1997. And so the night before...
Last century.
The night before. So we lived in Springfield, Missouri at the time. And the night before, I was talking to my friend Buzz. So that was his actual name with one Z, B-U-Z, Buzz Jacobson. And
Like Buzz Lightyear.
Exactly. And so Buzz and Cosmo, we were buddies. And Buzz and his wife Vicky kind of took me in, like when I was all alone there, and invested time in me. Anyway, so I was over at his house that night, and my car was a brown hatchback 1978 Toyota Corolla, and so it
nearly your age.
yeah, and so I loved this car. It had working air conditioning
And heat.
And heat.
Yep.
Of course, heat. Yeah, but it's surprising when the air conditioning works sometimes in these old cars. And so now my friend Buzz had a Mercedes, and he said to me, he recommended that since was going to be going on my first date with the next day with Riv, he was like, maybe you should take my Mercedes, pick her up in my Mercedes. And I was like, Buzz. I'm like, I appreciate it, but I don't want to. That's not me. I don't have a Mercedes.
I want her to see right out the gate how little she's getting.
Yeah. Like, look. The Lord's called us into ministry. This is not the life.
Yes, look around. It's poverty.
This is not going to be the life of, Ritz and Glitz and Mercedes and BMWs.
Nope.
And so if she doesn't like me because of my car, I'd rather know that immediately and not waste my time than so if she doesn't like me because of my car, so I'm going to pull up in my car because that's who I am.
That is who you are, and you are not going to be moved. That's who you are. You're showing me right out the gate.
Well,
It has been communicated. Good job.
Okay. So I'm going to pick her up, and she's getting ready, so you can tell your side.
So I have a Greek mother who's a funny Greek mother, and she was going to take me and drop me off because I was supposed to meet Cosmo at the library. And so I'm not big into makeup. I wear it if I have to wear it. So I had done my face, but I think in a lot of the same ways, I was like, look, this is who I am. He either likes me or he doesn't like me. I really wasn't interested in being in a relationship with anyone, but I did feel the Holy Spirit's urging for me to do this. So I wasn't going to help at all. Like, if this was a God thing, then it's a God thing. If it's not, I'm out of here. I've wasted too much time on too many idiots. So then I wore I wore a skirt with a long skirt, like I did. This is how I dressed back then. I would wear a long skirt with my little white Keds or whatever, and I'd wear a t-shirt. So my shirt was white with little blue flowers, and my tennis shoes, and my t-shirt, and I got in the car
And the long black hair.
and I had, well, was it black?
It was pretty dark. No, maybe not black at the time.
Yeah, it was just long. I don't really take care of my hair, so I don't know what color it was. It was whatever the box messed up.
She was beautiful.
Anyway, so my mom's driving me and we're talking the entire way. We get in the car, we're talking, everything's fine. It was nice of her to drop me off, and we get to the library parking lot. And as I'm going to get out of the car, my mom looks at me and she goes, so is that how you're going to do your hair? And I'm like, what? She goes, why didn't you put on any makeup? I go, I have makeup on. And I'm going to get out, and she goes, so that's what you're wearing? And I'm like, oh my gosh, Mom. And she just started laughing really hard and was like, bye. She's like, be humble.
I mean, so insecurity.
No, she really laughed hard. Like, she thought it was so funny. But I was just like, oh my gosh, and I closed the door, and I think I was waiting outside for you. Or was I waiting inside?
I think you were waiting inside. But we didn't have cell phones. So we had set a time, and I was picking you up from, it was at the Evangel University library.
I think I just came out to the car, or you pulled up. I don't know. Yeah. But anyways, you had your little brown car, which honestly, I didn't even notice. Like, I noticed it was a small old car, but I wasn't like, I'm not a car person. Right. If you'd have pulled up in this really hot car, first of all, if you'd have pulled up in a really hot car, I think I would have been like, nah, because that's just not my thing. But you didn't. You pulled up in that nice brown hatchback with where you had to like pump it up to get it to go when you needed it to go, pumping that foot.
Well, you had to pump it to keep it from stalling.
Yes. It's very much so like you're rolling on an air ball, like one of those bouncy balls. And when you get to a stop, you don't want it to deflate, so you're like pumping it up, and you go, okay, we can start rolling again.
I don't know what kind of air ball you're talking about.
Like a beach ball. Oh, the ones that are filled with air, like an air mattress.
Yeah, but I've never rolled.
They're air balls.
I don't sit on those. I don't understand.
So. Right, you don't. Okay. That's an analogy.
So anyway,
I got there and you picked me up and we went to the restaurant, and I was very confident in myself. I really was. Like, it didn't matter.
Well, because you knew what I didn't know.
Right. And I also had nothing to lose. Like, if this was something, it wasn't like my heart was in it.
Sure. Yeah. So now me, on the other hand, and I was excited. I couldn't believe that I was going on a date with Rivkah Gannon. Like, this was the girl that had become, from one meeting, had become like the girl of my dreams. I could close my eyes and see her. I remember when I had been at home or I'm trying to remember when this conversation happened. It happened pretty early on. And it was surprising to me. I'm talking to my father. My father never, ever encouraged me about the seriousness of any kind of dating relationship. Whenever I would date a girl, he would say, son, don't worry about the girls. You worry about your education. Focus on your education. That's what you need. Don't worry about the girls. You have your whole life to worry about the girls. And when I told him, the first time I told him about Rivkah, I said, I met this girl, and she's Greek, and she grew up in Israel. Her parents are ministers in Israel, and he looked at me and he goes, who knows, son? Maybe this is the one. And I remember being like, what? Like, when I was growing up, now I grew up in the Assemblies of God, as did Rib, and when I was growing up, my dad would tell me that he'd say, the girl you marry, number one, she's got to be Assemblies of God. Number two, she's got to be Italian. And I would say, okay, I get kind of being equally yoked, Dad, like with someone of the same, the same faith and the same foundational faith. But I said, all the Italian girls I know, they're either Catholic or obnoxious. And I'm not really interested in any of the Italian girls I know. No offense to the Italian girls. That's just had
And
been.
no offense to the guys I dated when I called them idiots. They weren't idiots. They were gentlemen.
But that was just my experience at that point. So anyway, I said, so Dad, I said, she's Assemblies of God, but she's not Italian. He goes, I said, she's Greek. And he goes, it's the same thing.
It really is the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it is in the sense that, now I've never heard a Greek person say, and this is true. This is true. I've talked to plenty of Italian people, and they'll be like, oh, hey, you're Greek. Oh, we're the same. We're the same. Greeks don't say that. Greeks don't go, oh, you're Italian. Oh, we're the same. We're the same. Typically, Greeks are like, hey, like brother, but not that we're the same. Because, there are the Greeks, and then there's everybody who wishes they were Greek.
Right. See, when I was growing up, my mother would say, there's two kinds of people in the world, the Italians and everybody who wishes they were. So that's kind of a thing.
That
It's
too,
the same
though.
joke.
I think you guys need to find your own joke. That's our joke.
Well, okay, you get that joke.
Okay, keep talking. Keep going.
So anyway, I'm taking her to, I take her for lunch. We go to a restaurant in Springfield called Ebbets Field. And when we get in there, the place is packed. It's packed for lunch. So we're sitting in the front, and we're waiting to be seated. And while we're sitting in the front, she asks me a question.
So, we're ping-ponging now?
I suppose. I'm trying.
Okay, so we sat down, and I really felt like I was sitting down to interview him. And that's how I sat back in my chair, kind of like I am right now. Sat back in my chair, and my arms were crossed. And he was leaning across the table, like elbows on the table, leaning forward as we were talking. So I just started asking questions like, so I think, did I start with like, how did your parents meet?
We weren't at the table yet. We're sitting on the bench in the front entry waiting to be seated.
Okay.
And that's the question you asked me.
How did your parents meet?
How did my parents
So for me, I wanted to know what his history was. I suppose it's like a pedigree. Like, tell me what your pedigree before I take any time.
I suppose, yeah. So I
Not that really matters. That's not what I'm saying. It just was something in my family, who we are and who our parents were, and even our grandparents meant something as to who we are now. Like Gannons were Gannons.
Right.
Just like you were Panzettas.
Absolutely. There's a
And
strong
so I just
sense
wanted
of
to know.
identity and heritage.
And the way my parents met was it was a story in and of itself. And so I wanted to know how your parents met.
Yeah, so I began.
You don't have to tell the whole story.
No, I don't have to tell the whole story,
Okay,
but I
thanks.
did tell her the whole story, and the long and the short of it is that my dad was in Italy, and he met my uncle. My Uncle Dan was an American pastor that was visiting Italy, and he met my dad, my great uncle, and
You're like starting to tell the entire story.
so anyway, he sees a picture of my mother. He gets her address. He sends her a letter. He believes that the Holy Spirit, he says that he saw her picture. The Holy Spirit impressed on him, this is the girl. So he gets her address. He writes her a letter, and in the first letter asks her to marry him. And then and he comes to the United States to meet her for the first time on January 3rd, 1970. And they were met. And the next morning, he says, so, you going to marry me or not? And she said yes. And they got married on March 14th, 1970. So I tell her this story. And I told her, I think it was a pretty brief rendition of it. And I just go.
Well, and then you're like, isn't that crazy?
Exactly. I was like, isn't that crazy? I mean, to me, I was of the mindset that at that time, you meet a girl, you date for a year, you're engaged for a year, and you get married. That was sort of my time frame. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I expressed to her.
So you said to me, isn't that
crazy?
And
right.
I said, no, I don't think it's crazy. And then I explained to you how my parents met, and they had been friends, like just friends, not even slightly interested in each other since they were 15 years old. And then when they were 18, the Lord spoke to them. They were out for their graduation dinner, and the Lord spoke to them both at the same time and said, this is the person you're to marry. And they were so stunned, they left without eating. My mom went home and she cried because, not that my dad was some terrible person or something, they were best friends, but she wanted to go to Greece as a missionary. She didn't want to follow him necessarily. But the Lord, of course, put the Jewish people on her heart, and they got married and they went into Jewish ministry. And so for me, I had seen and heard many of the stories of God moving and being a part of those things. And it's not just a slow fade into, well, yeah, I think so. And well, maybe this is the person or whatever. It was the Lord spoke to us and this is what the Lord did. And it's not that I needed to copy my parents or anything. I just know that I wanted a true move of God when I was going to meet the individual, because I had been in a lot of relationships that I really thought were great that weren't.
Yeah, tell them real quickly about the conversation you'd had with your father earlier that year when
I was dating this guy just because I was bored. And, he was the category of idiot. But I was just bored. Anyway, so I was dating this guy.
Work or whatever.
Huh?
A guy that you worked with.
Yeah. He was a cook in the kitchen. Anyway, so I was in the kitchen and my dad came up to me and said, Rivkah, why are you dating this guy? Like what? And I was like, Dad, it's nothing. I'm just bored. I'm just, I said, when it's the right guy for me, I want the Lord to just bring him into my life. I want him to come to me. I want him to be like, I am the one that God sent I am the one that God sent to you for me to marry. And I just want to know, and then I want to marry him. And my dad said, because my emotions and my feelings had always led me astray. I think they're really powerful, your emotions, and they can be very deceptive. And so I was like, I want to know that it's God, because I'm not interested in marrying someone that I'm in love with. I'm more interested in marrying someone that God has ordained for me to be with. And so he said, okay, well, we'll have you married by Christmas. And I went, all right.
Right. So at this point, we're sitting at the table as I finished telling her the story. And she says, I said, don't you think it's crazy how, in terms of how my parents had met and gotten married, and now they'd been married for almost 27 years at this point. And
that's only 2 years longer than us.
I know.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And
oh my gosh, I'm so old.
Our oldest son is older than we both were.
Okay, shh. Just keep going.
I'm as old as Dad was when you met.
Yeah, I was 21. Yeah.
Okay. Everything's depressing.
No, look at how beautiful they are.
No, I'm not saying they're not beautiful, but
look at what the Lord's done. So anyway, so I go, isn't that crazy? And she said something like this, and she said, no, I don't think it's crazy. I think when you go ahead. You can...
Well, I said, I think when you meet the person, and no, that didn't. I said, no, I don't think it's crazy. And then I asked you, what's your idea of, it went from there through all your girlfriends. I wanted to know about each one. I asked him questions about where he went to school. I was like really interviewing
right,
you.
but prior to that whole thing, you did say something, because it was before the end of that part of the conversation.
So I said, what's your idea of a good, how's a relationship going to work for you? Like, how do you see a relationship going? And he said, well, I think, when you meet a girl and you like a girl, then you date for a year and you're engaged for a year and then you get married. And I went, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that.
You said, not me.
Not me. And he's like, well, no. And I go, no. I said, I've already done my long-term relationship. I'm not doing another one. When the Lord brings the right guy or the right girl, it's the right time and you get married.
Right.
And you went, okay.
Oh, all right. So in my mind, I'm redoing the math for... I'm like, well, I was like that.
Yeah, I think you went home to your friends and you said, guys, I think I'm getting married.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I was like, so then she asked me, so tell me, tell me about, your dating relationship. So it kind of seems strange, but she's wanting to know who you are, and it was really, we never ate our food, by the way. We did not eat.
Yeah, I don't even remember.
We did not eat our food, at all. We talked.
How can you eat and talk at the same time?
You can't.
And when we got there, it was before lunch, and we were in a line to wait. And when we left, it was near dinner time, and there was no one. It was
empty. Yeah. So now I gotta. This does require some background. This.
What are you telling?
So I'm going through. I'll tell you.
I know.
I'm telling the
I know.
story.
He's like, I'm just forging
So
ahead.
I'm going
I know you are,
through talking about different, well, I dated this girl in high school and yada yada, and telling this story here and there, and
I'm listening
and,
very attentively.
you know, talking about one that, you know, was sort of like that I was crazy about for a long time, but it didn't end up happening, and so forth and so on, and then I said, and then I was
no names. Don't do names.
I'm not doing names.
Okay. Well, I'm just making sure.
Oh my goodness, yeah, I'm not doing names. So then I was dating, and I didn't use the name either. I said then I was dating someone up until recently, and then that's over. And I wanted to quickly move through that. Now here's the reality. So I'm going to come back to that. So I mentioned, and no names,
And you
but
jumped over it. Like
yeah.
you just mentioned it.
But I
and you
mentioned it
quickly-
in the first podcast that I had been seeing this girl, and she was a nice enough girl, but she actually wasn't interested in being like in a committed relationship, which was outside of my purview. I'm like, I'd never done like the dating for fun thing. It didn't fit my mindset, and so, you know, but she was a nice girl, and she had been hurt in a relationship, so she was taking things real slow. And so I was like, okay, cool. So we'd been seeing each other. That was the language we were using for a couple of months. And she was sort of still in this like, you know, waffly kind of not wanting to commit. And in fact, she had come to me and said that the worship leader at the church we were attending had asked her on a date. And she said, I just felt like I should tell you that. And
She wanted to go out with him, didn't she?
Well, she said she wanted to talk to me about it, and I said, I don't know what to tell you. I said that's the arrangement we've agreed to, is that we're just seeing each other, and so that makes it where you can see other people, I guess. I said, I'm not over here doing cartwheels about it. I don't like it, but if that's what you want to do, then that's what we've agreed to at this point. I mean, we were just going out on dates. I hadn't even held the girl's hand or anything. It wasn't anything like that. And so she didn't end up going out with him because of that, I suppose. And so it just so happened that right now during this time when Riv and I are out on this date, so I felt free to take out Rivkah on this date because that's the deal. You know, and this was the deal with the rules that this girl had set. So I'm not... this isn't the way I like things. So it just so happened that this week that Riv and I are on our first date, that this girl is away. She's gone back to the Northeast for her spring break. She was an Evangel student. She'd gone back for her spring break. And so back to the conversation between Rivkah and I just briefly said, so I said, and so recently I was, seeing a girl up until recently, and that's over because in my mind I had determined that was over. I mean, Rivkah's here, and this is where my whole everything is going to be. This was the girl that I had met the one time that was so deeply impressed into my heart that I was not going to waste time on anybody else. And so I just said. So that was over, and tried to move quickly past that. So
yeah, he just was like, and then I did this for a little bit, and then we broke up. And anyways, and I went, no, wait. And he's like, okay. And I go, why did you break up with her? And he said, what? I said, the last girl you were with, why did you guys break up? And he got really uncomfortable and started kind of hemming and hawing and shifting in his seat. And I remember thinking, I have hit something here. What's going on here? And he leaned forward and he said, okay. He's like, I'm gonna say it. And I was like, okay. And he said, I broke up with her for you because I wanted to go out with you. And then he said, okay, there, all my cards are on the table. I'm totally vulnerable. I've totally exposed myself. And he was like, he sat there, and I said, I thought it was really funny because he was so nervous and so worried about what I was going to think.
Well, and what I think what she noticed is 'cause we had been having a very comfortable conversation, very natural,
all of a sudden
smoothly.
you stiffened up and
Because again, I just told you all sort of the dynamic of this relationship, which was for me a very unusual thing. And so when she says, "Well, why did you end it with her?" Well, the only reason I ended it was ending it with her. The girl didn't even know I was ending it with her because she's away on spring break. But again, we're just like seeing each other, whatever. The only reason I was doing that was because I was going to pursue Riv. But how is that going to sound? Like, that's going to make me sound like the kind of girl, or excuse me.
yeah, the kind girl.
That's going to make me sound
You're a pretty
like the
girl.
kind of guy that as soon as he can be with one girl, and as soon as he sees her and sees someone else, that he drops this one for that one. And that's not my character. That's not the way I roll. I'm very loyal and very committed. And but so I didn't like the way that could be perceived. And so I sat there going,
Yeah,
okay.
it was very uncomfortable for you, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
So
I really did.
I was highly, and so
I remember feeling the smile on my face, like, oh, look how
hit something.
uncomfortable he is.
So I go, okay, all right. I ended it with her because I want to pursue you. There you go. And
Did you use those words?
I used the
Pursue?
word pursue you. I wanted to pursue you. I wanted to focus on you. And I was like, there you go. I am on the table.
I didn't find
I am
it
completely exposed. I felt I had laid it out there.
Well, you basically said to the
And
girl
again-
on your first date, so I like you a lot.
Yeah,
And you
I
didn't
mean-
know that I knew what I knew.
No.
Right.
And so I felt very, and she saw my discomfort and immediately it showed me amazing kindness.
What?
So you saw me uncomfortable.
So I saw him uncomfortable and I leaned back and I remember I took my wallet and I put it on the table. Like, all right, I guess we're going to do this thing. Like the interview is now over. Now I will go ahead and I will give you a little exchange. And I said, okay, well, I just wanted you to know. I said that when I came to the seminary.
You said it question-wise. You want to know why I came to the seminary?
Oh, you want to know why
day?
I came to the seminary that day? And he said, why? Because he was desperate.
I was so uncomfortable.
He's like, why? And I go, well, because I came to see you. And he said that it was like fireworks just started going on.
Seriously, if you could do an overlay like you see in a movie where it's like the Disney fireworks, da na 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 na, pow, pow, pow.
Yeah.
You could have. I mean, my heart. I'm not exaggerating. I was ecstatic here. Like I went from feeling so exposed to feeling an elation of. Like, I couldn't believe, and she said, because I came to meet you. And I'm like, what? And and then she proceeded to tell me.
Did I tell you how, in that moment, did I tell you how I met your mom? Or like I talked to your mom? Oh, yes, I did. I said, so here's what happened. And I went through and I told him the story. And I told him how his mom had told me he thought I was beautiful.
And I'm like.
And he was like, what? And so I told him the whole story. And then I got to the end. And still, this for me is kind of super bold on my part. Because I really wasn't bold in the relationships that I had been in. I was always like the follower, like, oh, okay, all right, or whiny, I don't know. But anyways, in this relationship to begin with, I was just like, I have a sense of control over what I'm doing, what I'm not doing. And so anyways, I said, so this is, and I said, and I don't believe that any of this is coincidence.
You said, I don't know about you.
Right. I don't know about you, but I don't believe that any of this is coincidence.
You said, I don't think that me calling your mom was a coincidence or that it was an accident. And I said, I don't think so either.
Right. And then we got quiet because
the gravity of what was just
right,
spoken. What have we just said? She sat here and she says, I don't know about you, but I don't believe that any of this was coincidence, that me calling your mom I don't think that was coincidence or an accident. And I go, I agree. I don't think so either. So we have just implicitly stated what we are sensing in our spirit, that the Lord has crafted this, that he has been leading us to one another. And listen, I needed the fireworks. And she needed the not fireworks.
Right.
Like I was at this point where, for a variety, I needed that. And I
needed to know that it wasn't this emotional decision.
You gotta understand. So Riv had been dating guys that were like 6'2" and 6'3"
6'5"
and 6'5", and I'm not.
The last guy I dated was 6'5". He was a bodybuilder and he had blonde hair and blue eyes.
Right, which is almost like me. Except if you take the 6'5" and you flip it, that's closer to my height, 5'7" and a half, and you got to count the half.
Gotta count the half.
It's a half, unfortunately.
Is it? Are you shrinking?
No, it was never 3/4. It's always 5'7" and a half. No, I never, son. I've known my height for a very long time. 5'7" and a half, because it's a high percentage. A half an inch is a high percentage, and you got to count it when you're 5'7" and a half. Anyway, and so I didn't have that look, and that's one of the things she later said to me, because I look like one of her, like I could be her cousin or her brother or something like that.
Well, not my brother. My brothers are like white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, then I went home and I called my best friend back in Florida, and I said, hey man, and I said, I think I'm getting married. Because now I knew it wasn't a year, and then a year, that wasn't happening.
Yeah.
I don't know what's happening here, but it was very surreal. Like I took her back to meet her friend. Her friend Amy was picking her up. There's no danger in saying Amy's name. Amy was picking her up, and they were going out, or they were going somewhere, and then I went back. And so then the next day on Wednesday, that was a Tuesday, April 1st, and then Wednesday, April 2nd, she comes by in the library, and she's like, I have a drama assignment. Had to go to the Springfield Little Theater.
That's
the next day.
day.
That's the next day. Yeah.
That was fun.
It was
you almost killed us, but that was fun.
It was a wild week. It was like a lot.
Right, because we went on our second date, and then my friends came from California to visit, and then you went to Brownsville Revival.
Mm-hmm, the second time.
Yeah, you went the second time to the Brownsville Revival, and I had said to you, because I was having a lot of anxiety, like this was going super fast. Like my spirit was at peace, but my flesh was like, holy cow, this is insane.
Can I back up a second, though?
Sure.
Before we go to that. So then, like, somewhere later that week, we were going out on another date, but it was like a double date, kind of. We were going to be having dinner at her friend at Amy's house, Amy and Matt, and then you and I were on a date.
It was for my birthday.
It's for your birthday.
Yeah,
that's right.
So it wasn't a double date because there was more.
It was four of us. No,
it's
just four of us. No, your birthday party was a different thing. This was four of us.
Okay.
And it's at like her house, and so. Okay, so we are okay. That's my Joe Pesci. So we are eating, and we've come to the we've come to the end of our meal, and Rivkah says to me, she says, "Do you know what I'm in the mood to watch?"
And I had been for a while.
Right.
I'd been thinking about it.
And I said, "Like, what are you in the mood to watch?" And she said, have you ever heard of the movie? It's a musical called Oliver. Now, I got to listen. I had loved the musical Oliver since I first saw it when I was like 13 years old. I had recorded it. I knew all the songs. When I was in college hanging out with my friends, I would break into song from Oliver randomly, and none of them had seen.
Such a funny dude.
None of them had seen the movie, and I was like, "You guys are insane! This is an amazing movie." All of my friends knew the name of the movie Oliver. None of them had ever seen it. They just knew it and that I sang it all the time. And when I got to Springfield, I got my first VCR that was mine. I went to a store called Hastings, and I bought I bought 2 movies.
It's so funny to me, all the details that you give in a story. Like,
Sorry.
I went to a store called Hastings.
Well, it's just the timeline.
Setting the stage.
Yeah. So I went to Hastings and I
Yeah.
bought Scrooge the musical with Albert Finney. Excellent musical if you haven't seen it. And I bought Oliver.
And Oliver was something that my dad introduced us to when we were kids, and we would watch it. I think like how we do, like every Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Or
We
maybe
watched it every Thanksgiving. I don't know if you did, but we did.
You did at your house?
Yeah, because
Was it on TV?
It came on TV on Channel 44.
Yeah, I think we did too. Because, anyways, but my dad introduced it to us as far as I can remember, because he was really into musicals.
Yeah.
And I hadn't seen it in so many years, and I was just like thinking about it recently, and I'm like, you know what? I'm in the mood to watch. I don't know if any of you've heard of it, but I'm really in the mood to watch Oliver. And you just about
Came out of my
lost your
chair.
mind. You're like, wait, what?
Are you
now?
kidding? What did you just say?
Right? And you're like, I have it at my house.
I own it.
You're like, I can go get it right
Like
now.
my little apartment was like a couple miles down the road.
And I
I
was
could
like,
go get it and be back
okay,
here. I
sure.
couldn't believe it. So it may be, and I may be confusing because I did talk to Steven after that first date. But I called Steven that night and I said, hey, so listen, what happened? Yada, yada, yada. She said, you know what I'm going to watch? Oliver. And Steven goes, it is God. Because it was because again, my friends from
And at that-
college all knew the name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at that dinner, I remember being in the kitchen helping Amy for us to get stuff to the table. And I turned to her and I said, because I didn't tell you this yet, but I said to her, I think I'm going to marry him. And she was like, oh my gosh, what? Yeah, you really? And I'm like, yeah, I think I'm going to marry him.
Yeah.
And so then of course, the Oliver story took place and
Yeah.
all that. And then what did we do?
And then,
because this all happened in 2 weeks.
this all happened very
Yeah.
quickly.
So my dad was out of the country.
Not out of the country. He was out of the state.
I might as well have been out of the country. Anyways, but he was out of the state because that's really vital information. That
Yeah, I told
country
that-
versus state.
I told that last time he was in North Carolina.
Okay, fine. So he was out of the state, and my mom, though, was like watching all this stuff happen. And again, it's happening in a very short amount of time. And there's talk, and my brother Jonathan's like, wait, now what? And I'm like, I don't know. And so my mom talked to my dad on the phone, and she's like, I think you need to come back. She's like, I think Rivkah's getting married. And my dad was like, wait, what? I've been gone like
a
2
week.
Like he's like
1 week. He was
he's like, I've been
teaching a
gone
modular class.
Right.
In
And so he was like, I've been gone a week. And so then he came back and then we were was it our third date? Oh no, our second date was to the theater. We went and
Right.
saw the Italian opera.
and that's when I was sliding down in my chair.
Yeah, the chair was broken, and so you slid all the way down to where I was looking down at you as we're talking, and I'm like, "Is your chair broken?" And you went, "Yes, I think it is."
Yeah.
And I was laughing. Now that I know you as well as I do, that must have been really hard for you because, I was like towering over you as you were squinched down in this little seat.
I had noticed. I was just listening.
Sure, right. You're like looking up at me like a small child, like, "Yes, I think my chair is broken."
And then I drove down a wrong way.
Yeah, pulling out of the parking lot, he went down the wrong one way. So, and I was like, I think we're going the wrong way. And he goes, oh my gosh, that's right. He goes, we will never speak of this again. Yeah. So anyways, so then we went on I think it was our third date. Not our third date. We just
started talking every day and seeing each other.
And so you came over to visit me because this is when we knew we were going to get married, but it was before you asked my dad. This is when, because this is what I remember.
Okay.
So we're downstairs in my parents' house in the basement, and we're talking and visiting. We watched Multiplicity.
I remember that.
Yeah, we watched Multiplicity.
Multiplicity with Michael Keaton.
And we were talking and everything, and so I just looked at you and I said, so what do you think's happening here?
Oh, yeah.
Remember? I go, so what do you think's happening here? Because at this point, I have no romantic interest, like no romantic feelings. I'm getting to know you. We're friends, and it's fine and everything. I have no, there's nothing in me that, like I said to you one time when we were talking, I was like, I can't imagine kissing you. And he was like,
That's awesome for the ego, but
right. No, yours has your ego
It needs
is
it.
hard to touch. So you're going to be okay. But, but I go, and you're like, that's okay. You said, that's okay. It'll come.
Yeah.
It'll come. And I was like, all right. So anyway, so we're sitting there and I said, what do you think's happening here? Like, what's going to happen? And he looked at me and I remember I was sitting on the couch and you're sitting on the floor and you said, I think.
I know what's going to happen, but I don't want to say.
No,
Oh, wait.
that's what I said.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm confused.
You were so confused. So what happened is that you said, well, I think, and you're like, I think I'm going to marry you, is what you said. Yeah. And I said,
and I said, what do you think?
And you said, what do you think? And I said, well, I know what I think,
Oh, yeah.
but I'm just not going to say anything. And I'm not saying anything. And you said, what did you say?
Why not?
You said, why not? And I said, well,
I may change my mind.
I may change my mind. And you said, you won't change your mind. And I said, I might. And you said, no, you won't change your mind. And I said, no, I might. And you said, no, you won't. And I said, why not? And you looked at me and you said, because I'm going to win your heart.
That's it.
That's what you said to me. And you did. In that moment, I was like, all right, I'm in. And so then that was our first kiss.
No,
Yeah.
because you said we should wait to kiss
Until we're engaged.
until we're engaged.
No, but what happened was, no, I understand that. But we did kiss because that's when you were like, so can I call you my girlfriend now?
Yeah.
Like we did. We kissed that night.
All
That was
right.
our first kiss. And you said, so can I like call? And we set a wedding date. We started talking about wedding plans. We started saying how you needed to talk to my dad. And then at the end, after all these conversations, we know we're getting married. We kissed, all that stuff. You looked at me and you go, so, can I like call you my girlfriend now? And I looked at you and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I guess you should, huh?
So
we knew we were getting married after 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That was the 2 week mark. And then so what you needed to do was ask my dad.
right. But the thing is, what happened between those two things, though, your dad had returned after the first week. I remember it vividly because I wasn't like one of these students that would just go up and schmooze professors after class. So I would, I'd go to class in there. I'd interact in the classroom. But then when class was over, I'd go out, go to the next class, or go hang out with my friends. But now, here I've been going on dates with his daughter, and we're clearly understanding that the Lord is bringing us together.
I mean, it's been 2 weeks.
And now he's going to be, but it's been less than, before that, it's been less than a week, and he's going to be there. I remember thinking, what am I going to say to him? This is going to be awkward. And it just so happened that morning as I was walking into the classroom that he and I get to the doorway at the same time to enter the classroom. And he looks at me and he goes, "Hello, Cosmo." And I went, "Hello, Dr. Gannon." And we went inside, and then that was like, okay.
My dad is the king of smooth.
Yeah. And then so when we so like April 8th or so, or somewhere in there, we're going to Brownsville. Like, I'm going to Brownsville. Mm-hmm. And you
My friend, this was basically like right before the 1 week mark.
right. Dr. Michael Brown was still down there.
Mm-hmm.
And he was down at that revival, and
Right. And so you went down there, and I was up with my friends, and my girlfriend Krista came from California,
Right.
and I think Monica came to see Jonathan.
But you said to me before I went, you said, "Listen, when you're down there, really, really seek the Lord." Like, you were starting to get a little anxiety because this was all
right, my
happening
flesh.
so fast.
It was a lot.
And you were like, "Really seek the Lord about this, about us, like, really." And I was like, "Yeah, of course." And you were like, "Just really seek the Lord about what He wants." I was like, "Okay." So I go down there, and so I call back one time, and she's with her friend.
Well, I was with Krista, and Krista and I have been having these conversations because I was telling her about this guy I met and everything, and I don't think she'd even met you yet. And I said, I don't know. This is crazy. This is insane. I don't know that I can do this. this is a lot. I think I just want to be friends. Like this is really fast. And of course everybody would agree with that. There's no one that's like, well, it's been a week, so you should know by now. I think most people are like, that's a little crazy.
Yeah, no, this wasn't my MO. When I was at Southeastern, I was a RA, a resident assistant, and
Right.
I would usually talk freshmen
Out of
down
that kind of
the wall,
dumb stuff.
down off the ledge.
I mean,
I'd be
it's just
dude,
it's
slow down.
Right.
You know,
Yeah, no, it's
be
crazy.
rational and reasonable.
Yeah, it's a lot. So anyway,
So you're talking to Krista.
yeah, so I told her, I said, I really
Excuse me.
don't think I
Sorry
can.
about that.
I said, I really don't think I can do this. So she was like, all right. And so then we talked that night on the phone, and she was just laying on my floor. And I'm like, I'm just going to tell him, like, I can't, I don't think I can do this. And so then I get on the phone with you and we're talking, and I was like, look, I think I really just need to be friends for a while. This is going really, really fast for me. And I just want to be friends.
You said something like, here's what I know. I know I want you as a friend in my life.
Well, right. When we were talking to you, I said, I know that I don't ever not want to have you as my friend, but I really, like, I need things to slow down. I think this is just a lot, but I know that I want you as my friend. And that, cause this is the 1 week mark. And you said to me, okay, that's really hard for me because I've had friends and I've kind of done that before, and I'm not really interested in having a friendship with you. I want there to be more, but if that's what you need, then that's what I'm willing to do. If you need for us to be friends for a while, then we'll be friends for a while. And I was like, okay, all right.
Like
and
I needed to be, and I was careful about how I stated it because I absolutely wanted to be her friend. What I needed her to know was that that's not what, like, I have a lot of friends, and I've done this thing where I hung on for a long time, that kind of thing. I didn't believe that the Lord had brought her in my life to be my friend.
Sure, but
alone.
that's where I was emotionally.
Yeah, and I said,
I
so
just
listen.
finished telling Krista, and Krista was like, "Yeah, you just need to tell him. You just need to tell him." So, so you said to me, if that's all you need to be, that's fine. And it did something in me where it just, like, all the apprehension and the pressure and the anxiety, like, it just completely left. And when I got off the phone, I mean, it was like immediately, like, I got off the phone and I looked at Krista and I said, I'm going to marry him. And she went, what just happened? Because I'd been like, no, 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 no. And then I was just like, yeah, I'm going to marry him. And so she thought that was crazy, like cool, but crazy. And I think, it is crazy. But anyway, it was absolutely the Lord.
Yeah.
So then you went and you asked my dad for my hand. You got into a car accident.
Well, initially, we had set a date because, again, my mind was still... This is April.
Didn't we set a date after we were formally engaged?
So listen, no. This is still April of '97, and again, I do have a timeline in my brain that goes, okay, a reasonable engagement is a year, and I'm in school and whatever. So we begin talking about picking a date for our wedding, and it's, we got to add one other thing here.
Do we?
Yeah. And so we actually picked, I believe we picked May 8th, 1998 is we had picked because my semester would be open at the end of the next school year. And so that's what we'd been talking about. So the next day she comes back to me and she says, I was talking to my dad about the date that we picked. And I was like, gulp, and I was like, yeah. And she said, yeah, he doesn't think we should get married in May. And I was like, okay. And how, like when? And she said,
he thinks we should get married at Christmas.
In December. And in my brain, my assumption was he was saying December of 98. And so I was like, okay, I mean, a year and a half. Oof. And she goes, no, not next December. This December. And I'm like, what? Are you serious? And I was elated. And so then a little bit later, we were at he was preaching at a missions service at Evangel Church in Evangel Temple, I believe it was, in Springfield. And he was preaching a mission service. And while we're sitting there, now at this point in my life, I knew God had called me into pastoral ministry. and my passion was at this season, and I knew it would be seasonal for youth ministry, and I had expressed that already to her, and she felt we were on the same page in terms of a sense of calling.
Well, we were both going to go into
Into
youth ministry.
right?
Yeah.
And so we're at this mission service, and while I'm at the mission service, the Lord really begins to deal with me about reaching the Jewish people, and so I'm kind of wrestling with that, and so I'm like, okay, Lord, and I'm just kind of where He was calling me to reach my people, and so that evening, I'm at the house with Rivkah's house with her and her family, and
Well, let me say though, so at the service we were sitting there, and the Lord spoke very clearly to me, and He said, my dad was preaching and stuff, and He said, I want you to reach my people. And I went, wait, what now? And He said, I want you to reach my people. And I said, this is how I talk to God. So I said, okay, hold on. You just told me to marry this guy, and now you're telling me to reach your people. You're calling me into Jewish ministry when you just told me to marry him. So if you want me to do that, then you're going to have to talk to him, because he's the one I'm going with,
Right.
And so I stayed perfectly quiet. I didn't say anything. I was just like, that was enough. Like, Lord, if this is what you want, then you've got to make this happen.
And you have to understand, at that point, I've not told her or anybody
That you're
I'm
Jewish. I had no idea.
Right, because first of all, it felt like it would be a little convenient for me to be like, oh, your dad's a missionary.
Well, that's
in
because
Israel?
everybody does that.
Right?
I'm Jewish too.
Yeah, and I was just like, it just felt like, and it hadn't been a central aspect of my identity growing up. It was peripheral into my identity. My identity was as an Italian kid in an Assembly of God church, and so it seemed almost like a little bit of pandering, for lack of a better word. And so I hadn't said anything to her. So that night, we're at her house, and I said, hey, listen, I need to tell you something. And she was like, okay. And I said, so the Lord spoke to me this morning when we were in that service, and I believe the Lord, and that He's calling me into Jewish ministry.
And I didn't provoke anything.
She hadn't
I
said
didn't
a word
mention
about
it.
it.
I didn't tell you to pray about anything. I didn't say nothing.
That was the same day. It was that night.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I wasn't like, so did the Lord speak to you about anything? Like, I wasn't investigative trying to make something happen.
Right.
I was like, the Holy Spirit does not need my help at all.
Right. And so I told her, I said, I believe the Lord's called me into Jewish ministry, is calling me into Jewish ministry. I couldn't speak for her, what He's calling us. We had known each other for 2 weeks. So I know that there's been a major shift in direction of what I've communicated up to this point, and I need to make that clear. And so
I said,
she told me about.
I said, yeah, well, okay. I was there, and the Lord spoke to me, and I told the Lord that He needed to speak to you. So this is a confirmation. And of course, we have to be equally yoked with the same calling for what God was having us to do. I couldn't have a calling for one thing and you have a calling for something else. I mean, I suppose people can do that, but I always wanted to be together as a team,
to be unified,
in unity like that.
And so somewhere between then and the time we got engaged, somewhere after that, my parents had a phone call with your parents or with your mom, and then
no, I think my mom called your dad or
maybe
something.
That's
like
more
that, because he was an immigrant and she was an immigrant.
Yeah,
we both had parents that were born outside the United States, and
so I come over one afternoon and she goes, Cosmo, I talked to your father. Did you know you're Jewish? I didn't know you're Jewish. And I was like, yeah, I knew.
Oh, that was the most weird experience emotionally, what I felt in that moment.
Because I hadn't told you either.
No, I didn't know. And I was like, wait, what now? Wait, what? It was very, very, I can't explain it. For years, I had decided to put the Jewish thing to the side because I wasn't Jewish. And so emotionally, it was confusing because internally I felt Jewish. But I wasn't, and so I couldn't say I was, clearly. And that's not who God created me to be. So I had to decide at some point in my life, I am Rebecca Gannon, because that's my legal name, and I am a Greek, English, French, whatever girl. That's who I am. And so when it came out, first of all, that we were going into Jewish ministry, and then all of a sudden, now I'm finding out you're Jewish. And when I was 14 years old, I had been at the Wailing Wall. We went to Israel for the first time, and the Lord had spoken to me at the Wailing Wall and had said, you're going to move to Israel. You're going to marry a Jewish man, and one of your sons is going to be bar mitzvahed at the Wailing Wall. And so that day when I went home to the hotel, because we were on a tour, I said to my parents, and I had no idea when, I just said, I'm moving to Israel. The Lord told me I'm moving to Israel. And they had actually just been asked to move to Israel. And so as missionaries, and so my parents were like, okay, yeah, well, this is what the Lord's doing. And I was like, okay, yeah, we're moving to Israel. So even though I was 14 years old and when we moved, it was hard, but I knew that I knew this is what God was doing. So that had always been there in the back of my mind. And so, but I had pretty much, it's not God that is fallible. It's me that's fallible. So God's word never falls empty, but we can misunderstand, or I can not have heard correctly. So when that happened, that prophetic word that I heard, or was it a prophetic word? It's what I heard. It's what I heard from the Lord.
Spoke to you.
Came rushing right back. And it was this really, I guess in some ways you could say like it was a Holy Spirit moment, because that is the sensation I had, like when the Holy Spirit's really present. And I was like, oh, wait. And it kind of scared me. Mm-hmm. I don't know why, but it did. And so that was I had moved to Israel, and now I was marrying someone who was Jewish, and now I'm going into Jewish ministry. So it was like, okay, then.
Yeah. And I remember when I had a conversation on the phone with my dad, and we were talking, and I was telling my dad about what the Lord had spoken to me, calling me into Jewish ministry. And I said, so here's the thing, Dad. I said, the Lord's calling me into Jewish ministry, and that means, I know you told me never to mention it to people, never to talk to people about it for safety. I said, but I can't do that anymore. If I'm going to go in this direction, then I have to be able to talk about it. He says, of course, son, of course. And so that was the so
so that was our first date, and that led up to we knew we were going to get married, and then we can talk a different time about you asking my dad and all that.
Yeah.
But anyway, so excuse me. So by the time we set a wedding date, we had been together 2 weeks.
Yeah. And
the December wedding date was set 2 weeks after we met. Or 2 weeks after our first date.
Right.
And then 2 weeks after that is when you
put a ring on her finger.
You formally put a ring and proposed and all of that stuff. And 25 years later, here we are.
Yeah. May 3rd is when I put... So first date was April 1st. And May 3rd, I put a ring on her finger. That was... Listen, and as we end this podcast, we can talk about engagement next time. If anyone's
I don't know that anyone's interested in all
that. The interesting thing for us is that the template isn't, the norm isn't go on your first date April 1st, get married, get engaged May 3rd. That's an abnormally fast timeline. I mean, we got married then 8 months later, but
8 months to the day of our first meeting, I think. Something like
that. But it was a while, it was months and months later, but the template is that as the Lord leads and guides, that you follow him. And here's what we had, and we haven't mentioned through this, is that through this whole thing, I was in constant communication with my parents. She was with hers. And there was such a spiritual unity between, even for those in our lives, that because we were kids.
There was no conflict.
We're 21 and 22 years old, and recognizing our own, for me, recognizing that my hearing at times can get muddled with my own emotions, right, with my own wants. And so running that through the prism of mom, dad, how's this sitting with you? What is how do you feel in your spirit about this? And with her parents, There was total unity, total confirmation.
Actually, for everybody that thought it was insane until they would meet us personally.
Yeah.
And then they would go, oh no, this is supposed to be.
Yeah.
This, like, even if people weren't like in a spiritual context, they could feel that it was just supposed to be. And I remember, but that doesn't mean that it's not hard. I remember, because just a little bit after that, we had to go. Jonathan and Monica got married. What's their wedding date?
May 24th.
Right. So we had to leave and go out there. And my mom was like, okay, well, we'll just plan the entire wedding when we get out there. Like I just met this guy and now I have to plan this whole wedding. And I have to plan it in like 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Because once we come back, there's no internet. There's no cell phones.
There's
no
internet,
nothing
but
like
it's
that.
slow.
Well, I mean, there's no websites where
Right.
you can order things from a flower store or
That's
whatever.
true.
And so I remember just being so overwhelmed and I was just weeping and I was just crying and I'm trying to plan things and I'm like, it's so ridiculous. It's not what you dream when you're going to plan your wedding. You're like, how exciting. We're doing the flowers, we're doing the cake. And for me, I remember just being like, oh my God, and talking with my friends and them being like, you hardly know him. And I'm like, I know I hardly know him, but I know I'm supposed to marry this guy. So one time I was just weeping and crying and my mom was sitting there and she said to me, honey, you don't have to do this. Because it looked like I was just like a wreck. And I looked at her and I said, no, it's okay. I know I'm supposed to do this. I know I'm supposed to marry him. I'm just struggling. Like my flesh is struggling because this is on the flesh side of things. It's insane. I don't know him. It was like it felt very much like an
arranged marriage.
An arranged marriage where I met you, we decided to get married and you were like, oh, she's really pretty.
I won the lottery, baby.
Right. You were like, oh, she's really, and I'm like, okay, he seems great, and we were good friends. Immediately we were good friends.
Man.
But
We laughed a lot.
a lot, yeah. And but I knew I was supposed to marry you. And by the time we got married, I mean, I had prayed. I had said, Lord, if this is the man you want me to marry, you're gonna have to move my heart because I mean I care for him as a friend and he's a really wonderful guy, but I mean I remember thinking like I gotta actually marry him and like have a wedding night and everything. Like, Lord, you're gonna have to do something. And so when you said to me, I'm gonna win your heart, in that moment the Lord just flipped my heart and that was it. That's why we had our first kiss. That's how I know we had our first kiss. Anyways.
All right. Well, and for the two of you that are still listening, after that lengthy story, we're going to go ahead and pause it right there and or stop it right there. And we get married in December that year. And we'll see if other questions roll in between.
I think that's good. I think I'd
now
like
and
to
next
answer
week.
people's questions.
Yeah, I think so too. All right. Well, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Shalom, shalom. Have a beautiful day.